Great, so you've got Xcode 6 installed and you're up and ready to go. So where do we start? Well, I always load programs using Command space, and then I've already started typing Xcode there, but if you just type XCO, it'll pop up. Notice I've got two options, Xcode 6 Beta and Xcode. That's because I'm still running Xcode 5 on my machine. When you're watching this video, you'll probably just have Xcode 6 without the beta, because hopefully by this time Xcode 6 will have been out of beta and a full program. Either way, we click on Xcode 6 up there. You might get a welcome splash there, but if you do, just close it down, and we're going to go to File, and then we're going to create a new project. So that's what you do if you want to start a new app or a new anything really using Xcode. Okay, here we go. So I'll start by talking you through this setup process. We've got a number of default application types that you can use. So that master detail application, the first one there, is a kind of template for, it's much like the iPad email app. There you've got some options on the left and some content space on the right. So if you wanted to make an app like that, you might want to start with that template, and then you can go from there. A page-based application allows you to switch from page to page using the options at the bottom. A tabbed application is quite similar. Empty application doesn't contain any data at all. And then you've got game there. You probably don't have PhoneGap based applications, but I develop web apps in Xcode as well. If you're interested in that, then check out my complete web developer course, and that tells you how to create iOS and Android apps using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But the one we're going to focus on is the single view application. So very simply, this creates a kind of demo application that just gives us a single page, a single view or single screen that when we can work with to start creating our app. And I won't worry for now about all these other things down there. They're not important at this stage. We'll look at them as they come along. So we'll just click next. So product name, I'm just going to call it example app for the moment. You can call it whatever you like. And you can make up an organization name. My app development company is called Appfish. Organization identifier usually starts with a com, C-O-M. It's kind of the reverse of a web address. Instead of google.com, you have com.google. So it will probably be com. And then whatever your organization name is. And then it will work out the bundle identifier for you automatically. The language we want to select is Swift. We will be looking at Objective-C a little bit later on, but our focus on this course is definitely going to be developing in Swift. And then the final option is you can choose which devices you want this app to work on, so we can have it just iPad, just iPhone, or iPad and iPhone. For the moment, we're just going to look at iPhone, keep things simple, but we will look at universal apps later on in the course. Okay, and click next. So you can see I've got some various ones that I've been trying out already. I'm just going to create it in that folder. You can create an apps folder somewhere. I'd recommend doing it either on your desktop or in your documents, and then keeping everything together in there. We're not going to worry about source control for the moment. Again, we'll look at that later on. It's a great thing to use, but for now, I just want to keep things very simple, and we'll go ahead and create the app. Okay, let me just resize Xcode so that you can see it okay. You can see at the top it's processing files and doing various bits and pieces to get our app up and running. Here we go. So it's not the friendliest of interfaces. There's quite a lot going on there. So in this video, we're just going to take a few moments to look at the different parts of Xcode and what everything does. So down here on the left, we'll start here. You can see all we've got is a list of the files in our app. So we've got a couple of .swift files, which are the programs that make the app do something. We've got the main storyboard, which we're going to look at in the next video. We've got images that we can keep in there, and then we've got some other folders that we don't need to worry about at this stage. There are other uses for this pane on the left here, but for now we're just going to keep it as our list of files in our app. If we then work along to this central pane here, that's known as the editor. And this is where we'll be doing most of the stuff that we do when we're in Xcode. So at the moment, you can see it's got some basic information about our app. The bundle identifier that Xcode created for us earlier, version numbers, build numbers, what devices it's valid for. We can even choose what device orientation it supports, etc., etc. And later on, we'll see how to add app icons and launch images for our app as well. But in here, we'll also be actually writing our code. We'll be working on the main storyboard with the interface builder, so dragging and dropping things like labels and buttons into our display here. So that's what the central editor area is for. On the right here, at the top, we have what's called the utility area. And that's the bit that changes depending on what you're actually looking at here. So at the moment, it's got some basic information about the app, so the name of the app, project format, organization, etc., etc. If we clicked on, say, a label, then it would give us some information about that label and allow us to do things like change the color or change the content text of the label. Down here, we've got what's called the libraries pane. And this pane allows us to choose various things and essentially drag and drop them into our project. So you can see things that make a bit more sense there, like buttons, text fields, option boxes, sliders, etc. So we can just grab those and drag them straight into our project. Really useful. Up here on the right, when you've got limited screen space, as I do here, I'm producing this course on a MacBook Air, so it's not a really big screen. It's very useful to be able to remove certain bits of the interface. So if I want to remove the pane on the left with all those files, if I'm working on a particular file and I don't care what other files I have, I can just get rid of that. Similarly, here, I can get rid of the right pane and just have the editor. We haven't seen yet the bottom area. This is mostly used for output from our app. So if we get an error, it will appear down here. If we produce any particular output, then that will appear down here as well. So if we're not actually running the app, we probably don't need that. Finally, we'll look at, or almost finally, we'll look at the assistant editor here, also known as the smart editor. If we click that, essentially what that allows us to do is display two editor windows alongside each other. And we'll see how that's useful later on. It's particularly useful if you want to have the interface builder, say, on the left, and then a Swift file on the right. So you can actually see the code and the interface and how they work together. We'll see how that works in the next couple of videos. Let's switch back over to the view that we started with. Okay. Now, our final thing that we're going to look at is this bit up here. So one of the things that makes Xcode really useful as a developer environment is it's got an iOS simulator built in. So you can choose what product you want to run your code on. We'll use iPhone 4S for now. And then you just click play when you want it to run. Now, this usually takes a few seconds, depending on how fast your computer is. The Xcode will compile your app, build it, and then run it on a simulator. Sometimes the simulator pops up, sometimes you'll have to select it. So here we go, iOS simulator is there. It does take a little while to get going, but there we go. You can see I've got the whole iPhone in here, so you can actually have a little play around. It's just like having an iPhone, and you can see the interface, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. But for now, we'll just see our app, because we haven't put any content in, is just going to be a blank white screen. So this will get up and running in a minute. There it is. So that's our app. It's not the most exciting app. It doesn't actually do anything at all, but it is an app running on an iPhone, which is not bad for 10 or so minutes into this course. If you want to have a little play around, you just click hardware and then home. And that simulates pressing the home button. And so now you can play around with the iPhone just like you normally would. Obviously, you're limited with phone calls and pictures and things like that, but you can play with the calendar, scroll up and down, etc. We can even rotate the device. So we can rotate left, and then we can see what that looks like. You can do that with the command key as well. So command right, command left will rotate it, just like that. Let's put it back again. And you can even do things like shake and lock the device. So we can see what happens when our app responds to a shake gesture, which we'll produce one of in the next chapter. Okay, so that's the basic Xcode interface. We've seen the different parts of it, how they work together, and how we can run a basic app in the iOS simulator. In the next video, we'll find out how to add things to the main storyboard and start building up an interface.